Hi there, I'm Tom Zara, the owner of Zara Tutoring and creator of our Spotlight SAT program. I'm really excited for you to start our small group SAT class. But before we get started, I just wanted to share an overview of our program and discuss the expectations we have of students and how parents can play an active role with a time investment of about 5 minutes each week. To start, on the day of the first class, we'll grant each student access to our Spotlight SAT platform, which is where all the course content will be located. During this first class, we'll be discussing the structure of the course in great depth, including a look at each of the nearly 40 reference documents they'll have in their class folder, which includes my one-page Triple T document, Tom's Testing Tips for the math section, and my 26-page Triple T document for the very theme-driven reading and writing section. We'll also be establishing the students' weekly practice schedule from pages 4 and 5 of their folder, which consists of 5 days of practice each week, 4 of which will take about an hour from start to finish, and 1 of which will take just 15 to 25 minutes. During this first class, we'll also discuss how students will go about their first week of homework, which will be the first of 4 practice tests they'll take in their 10 weeks with us. This first practice test will serve as both a baseline of the student's current level, as well as a means of determining ambitious yet realistic goals. Students get lifetime access to our platform. As a result, students can revisit any of these videos and resources if at any time they don't recall what to do during a particular day of their practice, or they feel they need a refresher. During day 5 of their first week of practices, they're going to watch a 9-minute video on how to take the results from their first practice test and record all the data on their goal tracking sheet, which is going to be an extremely useful document over the span of the program. From there, in the video, I guide them on how to take that data and create ambitious yet reasonable weekly goals that we then extrapolate into their big picture goal. Then, on a week-to-week basis, we're all able to see how the student is progressing in relation to their goals through our color coding system. Green means they're right on track. Orange means they're almost there, basically within 1 to 2 questions of their weekly goal, or within 15 seconds of the time goal. And red means they still need work en route to their goal. That means they got 2 or more wrong than their goal, or they ran out of time and would have needed more than 15 seconds to finish. If a student is getting all greens on a particular week, that's an indication that if they were able to produce the same results on each section of the actual test, they should obtain their big picture goal. Now, keep in mind that students would have to be able to extend those single module practices to full sections of the test, which do require more focus and mental stamina. So why exactly do we have students write down their goals and track their progress? Well, for 2 reasons. 1, through a study done by Gail Matthews, she was able to conclude that people are 42% more likely to achieve their goals simply by writing them down. That's incredible. And 2, because of Pearson's law, which states when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported back, which students will do on a weekly basis, the rate of improvement accelerates. In order for students to apply the strategies they practice on a week-to-week basis in their single module practices to a more realistic testing scenario, we have students complete 3 more practice tests at key checkpoint weeks, which are weeks 4, 7, and 9. The big picture goal is obtained if and when the student performs at their full potential on both of the sections of the test on the day of the actual test. Although many students do end up meeting and even exceeding these big picture goals on the real test, it's important to be mindful of 2 things. First, the student's baseline score and what's considered reasonable improvements, which for us at Zara Tutoring is about 150 points. While we have helped students achieve up to 350 point improvements, and we've gotten students into the 1500s, that's not typical, although it is possible when the student fully commits to and follows the program to a T, putting forth maximum effort and making necessary changes as they reflect on the data from the detailed progress reports, which we'll talk more about shortly. And second, we all know that the pressure of the real test is much more intense than the pressure on any daily practice. That's why it's so important that students are focused during the 5 minutes on day 5 every week when they're assigned to read our Test Stress Success Manual PDF book. That's also why every single week we start our class by showing one of my mind mastery strategies of the week, each of which is a 1 to 3 minute video I created regarding a simple but effective psychological tool students can utilize on the SAT, in their regular classes, and in everyday life. Although we cover it in its entirety, during one of the videos on the first session, prior to starting day 1 of their regular practice schedule, we strongly encourage students to look over the program reminders document, which is page 3 in their folder. This will prevent them from making some of the common mistakes students make during the first few weeks of practices. Now, let's discuss the structure of the remaining 9 weeks of the program, as well as the rationale behind the structure. In these 9 weeks, we'll go through all 20 of the reading and writing themes that College Board is testing students on, as well as all 36 of the math themes that are on the test. Since there are almost twice as many math themes to cover than the reading and writing themes, we spend twice as many classes covering the math content, 3 classes for reading and writing, and 6 classes for math. Weeks 2, 5, and 8 are dedicated to the 20 reading and writing themes, while weeks 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, and 10 are all dedicated to the 36 math themes. All the lessons are in video format. There are 3 primary reasons for this. 1, there's so much content to cover, 56 themes in total, in just a 10-week period, that there isn't a second to waste. No time for a single filler word like the occasional 2, since the SAT is exclusively digital now, I decided that making our program much more digital as well would make sense. And 3, by recording my instruction for each theme in digestible videos, each one having a duration of about 5 minutes, students can easily re-watch whichever specific themes they find themselves struggling with in their homework assignments. That's why I spent over 400 hours taking every single practice question College Board released, synthesizing my findings into my Triple T documents, and recording 524 instructional videos that my awesome video editing team polished to make them as engaging as possible. So even though the SAT group facilitator is organized, competent, and well-versed in the content, in reality, I'm the instructor personally delivering all the content. In each class, after our facilitator shows the mind mastery strategy of the week and shares any announcements and/or details regarding the upcoming week's homework, they'll jump into the instruction. To keep things engaging for the students, the facilitator has the students play Kahoot during each session. For each theme, the facilitator will display the question on the screen for a minute if it's a reading and writing week, and for a minute and a half if it's a math week, since that's about the average time students get per question on each of those respective sections of the test. And then the facilitator will show my instructional video for that particular theme. In that video, I not only go over how to complete the question that students just attempted so that they know whether they got it right or wrong, but I show how to systematically approach all questions of that particular theme. My instructional videos for reading and writing themes are focused on quickly identifying the specific theme for the question based on the question's stem, and then exactly how to approach that kind of theme, typically with an easy to execute 3-step process. The Quizlet flashcards I created and have students practice for 8 minutes each day of their reading and writing practices also helps train them to immediately recognize how each theme's question is worded. My instructional videos for math themes, on the other hand, involve covering any foundational math topics from Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Trigonometry, or Probability and Statistics, referencing pages 33 through 35 of their folder as it relates to the specific questions at hand. I also consistently demonstrate how to follow my 4-step process that I lay out in my Triple T document, Tom's Testing Tips, for the math section, and systematically approach the question, and pointing out multiple approaches so that students can choose the approach that most resonates with them. To ensure students successfully go from theory to mastery, I provide them with 4 homework assignments each week, each of which has the exact same timing and number of questions as the modules they'll complete on the real digital SAT. In fact, the platform we use is essentially identical to the digital SAT platform, with all the same tools available, so that students will have already experienced it dozens of times before the day of the actual test. After your child completes their practice assignments, not only will they be able to see the answer explanations for all the ones they got wrong, but you both will be able to see detailed analytics regarding which themes they're still struggling with via their unique progress report link, so they can dial in on their exact deficiencies. In a separate, much shorter video that I'll share toward the end of week 2 of the program, once students have completed their first week of regular practices, I'll explain how to make the most of the key data in their unique progress report link. So be sure to check that out once I send it. For all 462 math practice questions they'll complete over the span of the 10-week course, I've personally recorded step-by-step worked out solution videos showing exactly how I'd approach the question. Students get lifetime access to our Spotlight SAT platform, even long after they've successfully completed our class, so they can go back to it anytime they're reviewing for another test date. A few final reminders. Anyone can choose to attend any class via Zoom through the link provided in the 24-hour reminder email email that will go out each week. It's the same link every week, so feel free to save or bookmark it for easy access. We ask that all our Zoom students always keep their cameras on. To efficiently take attendance, 5 minutes before the class starts, you'll receive a check-in form via email. Unfortunately, sometimes our emails go to the promotions, spam, or junk folders, so be sure to check these folders if you don't see the email. Your facilitator will display the unique code for your class on the screen, and they'll also type it into the Zoom chat. When you input the code into the form, we'll capture the exact time you checked in. The code is not case sensitive. At the end of each class, you'll also receive a checkout form via email, and your facilitator will provide you with a different code to input. This way we can keep parents in the loop regarding students missing, arriving late, or leaving early for any classes. If ever your child can't attend the session live, they can always watch the recorded session, which our facilitator will upload to the top of our Spotlight SAT platform within a few hours of the class ending. That way, students can watch the recorded session at their earliest convenience without missing a beat. That being said, we do recommend students watch the recording within 24 hours to ensure they can apply the strategies to that upcoming week's practices. We'll consistently have students submit their weekly homework prior to midnight the day before the next class. Their submission will simply consist of an image of the entire side of the current page of their goal tracking sheet. As we all know, we humans all need accountability. As such, each week we'll provide the parent and student an email to let you know whether or not we received the student's submission for that week. We highly recommend students stay on top of the 5 daily assignments each week, as well as the weekly submissions, because students' results will be directly correlated with their effort in following the program. I also highly encourage students to become their own guides throughout the process. As they become aware of the strategies and approaches, I want them to reflect on their performance and analyze the data as objectively as possible, making adjustments accordingly. As John Dewey once said, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. That's why part of day 5 of their practice schedule involves taking 5 minutes to do just that on their goal tracking sheet in the section labeled My Reflections. We have students select a theme that they particularly struggled with that week based on the data from their unique progress report link, more to come on this at the end of week 2, and articulate a very specific lesson they learned regarding how they'll approach the theme differently. So that's our program. Thanks for your time and attention up to this point. I ask that you stick around for just a couple more minutes. Every Tuesday on our Zara Tutoring Facebook and Instagram page, as well as on former University of Michigan Senior Admissions Officer Ashley Taylor's rapidly growing college planning for parents of high school students Facebook page, I post Testing Tip Tuesday. Let's close out our time together for a very applicable 2-minute throwback to one of my posts where I discuss one of the top 3 SAT prep mistakes I see from students so we can ensure your child doesn't fall into that trap. Today we wrap up our 3-part series on common SAT prep mistakes. Now let's explore practice timing. I've noticed that with our students in our SAT and ACT programs, even though the time commitment for students' daily practices is just 30 to 40 minutes per day, 5 days a week, students will skip days or even a whole week of practices because their school workload was heavy. Now, before I get accused of not valuing students' education, let me state for the record that I was a math and Spanish teacher for 8 years in both private and public schools. Go Highlanders! So I absolutely believe students should give their best effort in their classes. However, until their junior year, most students haven't been so busy that they just didn't have enough time in the day to get everything done. These days, students have their sports practices and games, their club meetings, homework for their AP and general courses, tests to study for, tutoring sessions, volunteer work, and, on top of it all, standardized test practice. It's exhausting just saying it all. As adults, we've learned that there just isn't enough time in the day to do everything on our to-do list. So, what do? We prioritize. We do the things that are going to move the needle the most first and learn to be okay with having some things unfinished in order to preserve our sanity and get enough sleep to not be running on fumes. By students' junior year, the GPA is pretty well established, for better or for worse. So, when they're completing a 10-week SAT or ACT program, what should be the top priority? Schoolwork or standardized test prep? Will doing their standardized test practice around midnight after they've completed all their homework for school produce quality test scores that will give them their best shot at not only admission into their desired university, but also scholarship so they don't spend the first several years of their career paying off their student loans? I doubt it. Or will 10 weeks of their course load taking a slight hit in order to prioritize standardized test prep make their GPA plummet? Again, question? I don't think so. Well, that wraps up this series on common standardized test prep mistakes. Wishing you and your child great success along your standardized test prep journey. It's really important that we're all on the same page. So please be sure that both the parent and the student each individually reply back to this email to let us know you've watched this expectations video, ensuring we start the program on the right foot. And remember, you got this.